His quiet fishing trip was about to end with a hatchet to the head, but she had no idea his bait was a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The conflict was brewing in Willow Creek for years, simmering just below the surface of manicured lawns and forced smiles. But on one fateful morning, it finally reached its boiling point. A woman, a self-appointed steward of her community, came to the lakeside armed with a hatchet and a mission: to confront a man who dared to fish on what she believed was her association's private property. She was the storm, a whirlwind of manufactured fury with a meticulously crafted persona of righteousness. But the man she faced was immovable, a quiet force of nature prepared for her arrival. He simply sat in his folding chair, his fishing rod held steady, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips as a familiar tug vibrated through the line. He knew the lake was generous today, offering him not just a haul of fish, but the final piece of his long-awaited retribution. The woman, whose name was Eleanor Vance, began to shriek, a theatrical performance designed to intimidate. "You can't fish here!" she screamed, her voice so loud it sent a flock of geese scattering from the serene lake.
"This is Willow Creek Association property, and you owe us $3,200 in fines." But her words bounced off him like harmless pebbles. The man, Arthur Finch, didn't even look up. He had been preparing for this day for months. He saw the two uniformed officers walking down the dock, and his expression remained calm. He sipped his coffee, letting the steam warm his weathered hands, as his serenity only seemed to enrage Eleanor further. "You think you own this place?" she hissed, her face contorted into a grotesque mask of self-righteousness. Arthur slowly leaned back, his movement deliberate and unhurried. He set his rod down and finally met her gaze with a quiet intensity. "Lady," he said, his voice a low rumble, "you just made the biggest mistake of your life." A flicker of confusion crossed Eleanor's face, her carefully constructed facade of power crumbling. What she didn't know was that every ripple on that water, every board on this dock, was already under his name. He reached into his tackle bag, pulling out a worn manila folder. He opened it, revealing a single pristine document: the Lakeview Estates property deed, with his name, his land, signed and verified. Eleanor froze. The only sounds were the soft flapping of fish and the faint, almost imperceptible click of a security camera he had mounted nearby. "You've trespassed on my property," he said, the gentle smile returning. Her scream echoed across the lake, a raw, primal sound of disbelief. "This isn't your land. The Willow Creek Association controls this lake," she shrieked, waving her hatchet in the air in a clumsy, pathetic attempt at intimidation. The officers, who had arrived just in time to see this unspool, exchanged a weary glance. Their attention shifted, their expressions now fixed on her. Arthur calmly held out a flash drive. "Survey records, county maps, every file you need. And your fine notices are already with my attorney." Eleanor stumbled backward, her grip on the hatchet loosening, her power gone. "If you fence this lake, you'll be cutting off the whole neighborhood," she yelled, in one last desperate attempt to regain control. Arthur stood up, brushing some stray crumbs from his jeans. "Exactly," he said flatly, "because I'm tired of being bullied. You wanted to fine me for fishing? Then nobody fishes." Eleanor's jaw dropped. The officer's lips curled into a barely concealed grin. They understood the power he held.
You can't do that," she stammered. "People need this access." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before slapping fake fines on me, before standing here with a hatchet threatening me on my own land." The officer lunged, grabbing her arm before she could swing the hatchet again. "Are you out of your mind?" he barked, wresting the weapon from her grip. "He's lying! This is our lake!" Eleanor screamed, thrashing wildly, but no one was listening. Arthur knelt down, picked up a fish from his bucket, and gently tossed it back into the lake. "You're done," the officer said, pushing her toward the squad car. "You wanted me arrested," Arthur said, his voice low but clear. "Well, looks like you're the one going in the back of that squad car." As the officers led her away, her pathetic shouts echoed like a child's tantrum. I am the HOA. You can't do this to me. Arthur handed the officer the flash drive. This has everything. And as a bonus, security camera footage from today. The cop's eyebrows shot up. You had cameras rolling? Arthur gave him a steady smile. Always. Never let anyone corner you without a record. The crowd gasped. Service? Eleanor's voice cracked. Arthur leaned in, his voice low enough for only her to hear. Yeah, and I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't fish on my own land. Her knees buckled. By the end of the week, the fence was complete. A tall, clean wooden wall with a heavy gate. Arthur sat in his porch, watching his neighbors stare in disbelief. You can't do this, a board member shouted. You're blocking community access. I'm blocking trespassers, Arthur said calmly. Read the deed. The lake access was never yours to give away. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. They were angry at the board for lying to them. Just then, his lawyer walked up with a stack of papers and handed them to Arthur. Injunctions filed. They can't even step on your property. The mail truck then handed a legal-sized envelope to the Willow Creek Association president. She opened it with trembling hands and her jaw dropped. It's a class action lawsuit, the lawyer announced. Every homeowner who was misled or fined illegally by this board now has the chance to get their money back. Gasps rolled through the crowd, and the board members visibly shrank. Months later, the case went to court. The evidence was overwhelming. When the verdict came, the Willow Creek Association was found guilty of fraud and unlawful fines. The organization was dissolved, and restitution was to be paid. Eleanor, meanwhile, faced her own charges and was sentenced to community service. Back at his property, the fence was a monument, a reminder that freedom and ownership are earned, protected, and defended. One evening, Arthur sat on his porch, his son beside him. His son looked out at the water and smiled. You didn't just win for yourself, Dad. You won for everyone. Arthur smiled, casting his line. I fought for this country once, and I'll fight for this land as long as I breathe.